Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont, and in this video we're gonna wrap up 2021. I'm gonna talk about some games, shows, and movies that I didn't make individual videos on, potentially with some incoherent rambling about real world stuff too, just as a warning in case that happens. But let's start with games, shall we? Well, 2021 didn't have that many big game releases for me. Monster Hunter Rise came out on Switch, but I decided to wait for the PC version, and honestly, I'm not that hyped for it, despite Monster Hunter World being one of my favourite games. Largely because I don't feel like Rise is adding much. In some ways, it looks and feels like a step back from World. That's not to say I think it's bad or anything, and I'm going to get it, I'm going to play it. I just don't see that much use in getting excited for it. I'll pick it up when the expansion is out so I can get them both together. When the Game Awards rolled around, I found their nominations rather lacking. I think the only nominee that I had played and had any interest in was It Takes Two. I played through that on the Game Pass a few months back, and I enjoyed the experience. Story was really bizarre, and the characters, well, they were written poorly and well at the same time, if that makes sense. But as a co-op experience, it was a good time. I can definitely say it's worth giving a shot. Lots of laugh out loud moments and some interesting gameplay mechanics. Other new games though? I genuinely can't think of many that I haven't already covered on the channel. Endwalker was perhaps the best release of the year, for me. For the most part, I spent a lot of 2021 playing things like Vermintide, Genshin Impact, Final Fantasy XIV, Destiny, and so on. A lot of these ongoing games. We tried out the Game Pass and we played quite a few co-op things on that too. I also played through Final Fantasy X for the first time since it released. I played it, back then in 2001 or 2002, whenever. And that was my first Final Fantasy game, actually. That was fun. Although, as is the case with almost every Final Fantasy game, I get to the final dungeon, I do most of the end game and optional content, but then I never actually clear the last dungeon. I just kind of stop playing. The Elden Ring network test was one of the highlights of 2021, bizarrely. I made some videos on that, and although I didn't touch on it in those videos, I did go out of bounds in the network test, and that was probably some of the most fun I had there, exploring this unfinished world and seeing what mischief I could get up to. I've always loved doing that in games. One of my fondest memories of playing World of Warcraft isn't raiding or PvP, but going out of bounds using the wall hopping technique and exploring all these unfinished or unreleased areas with my friends. What can I say? I love exploring, and Elden Ring looks to satisfy that itch. So, moving on from video games to movies, probably the standout movie to me this year, well last year, was The Green Knight, which I made a whole video on. But we had some other large movies that I've not talked about on the channel. Dune, Matrix 4, Spider-Man. There were like a bunch of Marvel things. Shang-Chi, Eternals. I didn't actually watch Eternals, I saw Shang-Chi. There was also James Bond, I have not watched that yet. So how about Dune/Dune? I'd say for the most part I enjoyed the film, but I felt like it had a few minor pacing issues. I wasn't a huge fan of the main actor, Timothée Chalamet, I think. Not sure why, but he seemed to just be like a charisma vacuum and not at all likable to me. I just couldn't buy him as that sort of character, and I didn't really care about him. I also didn't really like Zendaya in it, but that makes a good seg to Spider-Man, which is, it was a Marvel film. It wasn't very good. Now, I'll go into spoilers just in case you care about that and you haven't seen it, so if you do care, well, skip a few minutes ahead. But yes, the only thing that made that movie different from generic Marvel movies was that we had appearances from Tobey Man, Andrew Man, and some of the villains from the other movies. That was fun, but it did not a good movie make. The stakes were largely nonsense and the writing was, honestly, quite atrocious and full of plot holes. It was a fun movie, but definitely a stupid one. I do hope it leads to a Spider-Man 4 from, the Tobey Maguire ones and the Amazing Spider-Man 3 though. Andrew Garfield seems like a good Spider-Man, but his films, they kind of suck. How about Matrix 4? Well, I went into that one expecting to absolutely hate it. Instead, I just Well, I found myself asking why. Again, spoiler warning. Why was Smith there? Why was he immune to the new bullet time? Why was new Morpheus there? The whole movie felt pointless. And I'm sure the die-hard fans will say, that's the point, it was a meta-commentary about sequels and reboots, blah blah blah. But that's not clever writing. If I made a really bad movie and I said, haha, this movie is so bad, that wouldn't mean the movie is good just because I pointed out that it is bad, that I was self-aware. You know what it reminds me of? Outer Worlds. That game's writing was like, haha, capitalism is bad, even though this game is a product of capitalism. And there was no depth or point to the game's message beyond, haha, capitalism. Same sort of thing with Nier Automata. If you dare to criticize that game, a lot of people will just claim, you didn't get it, you don't understand it. As if the writing was some great work to be deciphered by the world's greatest minds. Now, I didn't hate Matrix 4 by any means. It was alright, you know, maybe like a 5 out of 10. I just don't understand the point of it, in terms of what it added to the Matrix universe. That could have all been summed up with a Wikipedia entry. There was nothing interesting about the action scenes or the visuals. Every time Neo was fighting, he kind of just started pushing stuff, which isn't what was exciting about the Matrix. I don't care what people say about the Matrix and its supposed commentary or themes. The reasons for that film's success were the visuals and the action scenes. That's what everyone was talking about. Just another pointless sequel reboot, in my opinion here. As has been the trend lately, movies are less interesting than TV shows. Which we can't really call TV shows. Streaming shows, then. I don't know. But man, we had a lot in 2021. Disney put out, like, WandaVision, Captain Falcon and the Winter Falcon, Loki, Hawkeye, and so on. There were a few more Disney Marvel shows like that, which, what was it called? What If? The Marvel's What If thing? I didn't watch that, I don't really care. But to rank the ones I did watch, well, I thought Captain Falcon, Captain America thing was kind of terrible. Loki was boring and pointless other than like the last half an hour. WandaVision had a few interesting ideas, but then turned into a big CGI battle at the end, because Hawkeye was alright. And I liked how the stakes were largely just an old man wanting to be left alone, so he could go home for Christmas. It was the most human, surprisingly the best for me. I'm not like a fan of Hawkeye, I never really thought about the character at all. I expected the Captain America one would be my favourite, as I like the Winter Soldier and I like the Falcon dude. But yeah, I thought that one was really bad, alas. Moving on to Netflix, they had Cowboy Bebop, Witcher Season 2 and JoJo Stone Ocean, which I can't really attribute to Netflix, but whatever. Cowboy Bebop, I've not even watched it. It looks painfully bad, and I will never understand why people think it's a good idea to remake something that is perfectly fine, like the live-action Lion King. What is the point when there's nothing wrong with the animated original? Witcher Season 2, though. I enjoyed it more than the first season. I didn't love it, but I kinda liked it. I'll admit I like Henry Cavill, so that helped. Still think Yennefer is a terrible and boring character, and anytime she's on screen I find myself growing bored, as her arc is just not interesting to me at all. JoJo Stone Ocean? It's been so long since I read the manga that I don't really remember it very much. I remember what happens at the end, but that's about it. It's nice, I'm getting to experience it all over again. As you may or may not be aware, I am a big fan of JoJo, and have been since 2007. Cannot wait for the adaptation of Steel Ball Run, which comes next. Only about 3 years to go until we get that, I guess. So, what's left when it comes to shows? Of course, I left the best one until last. The Wheel of Time. I read the bulk of Wheel of Time, probably around up to book 10 or 11, all at once, a long time ago. Like, I blitzed through it. I absolutely loved the series, until, I don't know, book 6 or 7, when I still liked it. When you get to like book 6, then 7, 8, 9, and 10, they were just like 1,000 pages of nothing happening, and then everything happening all at once in the last chapter. It was a huge inspiration for me though. And I always kinda wished there was an adaptation which could embellish on the amazing visuals that I imagined in the books whilst cutting out the filler and improving the pacing. So imagine my surprise when Amazon announced they were investing loads of money, like $10 million an episode or something like that, into bringing the Wheel of Time to life. And it sucked. I had a lot more written here originally. Like, I literally had 5 paragraphs, and I decided to trim it out because what's the point at the end of the day? I didn't think it was absolutely terrible though. As an adaptation of the books, absolutely, it is terrible. It is not faithful at all, it sucked. It's about as accurate as a blindfolded man throwing pebbles at a bee that's 200 yards away. If you take it as its own thing though, well then it's just a below average fantasy show which somehow looks cheap, more often than not. That was really troubling me throughout some of the episodes, so I couldn't quite put my finger on why, but a lot of the time it just looked off, it looked cheap. Overall, I'd give it like a 4 out of 10 as a standalone thing. Maybe 1, maybe 2 as an adaptation out of 10. Perhaps the kindest thing I can say about Wheel of Time is that it inspired me to go through the books again, and this time I will finish them. That, and has inspired me to kind of like plan out my own adaptation in my head. Not that I'm ever going to do it, obviously. If someday I somehow get the rights to Wheel of Time, and also loads of money so that I can hire people to make it, sure. But no, it's just like a fun thing I'm doing in my head, because the TV show was that bad of an adaptation. But it's fun to make these sorts of plans. How can you adapt to this faithfully whilst pleasing the fans and getting across the characters and the messages? Honestly, I think animation is the best medium for Wheel of Time. I can totally see how the first 3 episodes would go. So one day, when I'm like a multi-billionaire, I will buy the rights and I'll do it. Then I can watch a video of someone else tearing into my adaptation, the same way I wrote 5 paragraphs of how I hated this one. But you know what? That's useful. Don't get me wrong, I don't like being insulted, but when people leave useful criticism, I can always take that on board. I've had some pretty good criticism about some of my videos in the past. And also a lot of people calling me rude words, but you know, I just filter that out as it doesn't really affect me very much. Yeah, I ended up talking about Wheel of Time more than the others, huh? And that's why I had to cut out all that stuff, because this would have been like a 30-minute video where 20 minutes were just me talking about Wheel of Time. But how about other things in 2021? Nothing exciting, really. I mean, I became an uncle, I guess. Back in 2020, on Christmas Eve, one of my cats passed away. And although I'm not really like the spiritual type, there's a new cat that's been hanging around this year, and it's almost, I would say, it's like the reincarnation of my cat. And this cat, by the way, it's not even my cat, it's like my neighbor's cat, but the cat spends like all of her time in my home for unknown reasons. She's here like almost all day, every day. I don't know why. I don't mind though. It's nice to have a cat hanging around. As for 2022, well, we got Elden Ring. And I will hold out that this is the year we get Dragon's Dogma 2 announced at E3 or the Tokyo Game Show. Dragon's Dogma 1 released in 2012, so it's coming up in 10 years. There's a few games here and there I'm curious about, but Elden Ring is the big one. Wow, we don't have long to wait, do we? Like, at the time I'm writing this, it's like 50 days. What are you looking forward to this year? And what did you think of 2021? Did any great games come out that I completely missed? How about shows, books, movies, and whatnot? Let me know down in the comments. And either way, I hope this coming year is a great one for you, and I will have many videos to share with you. Until then, take care, and goodbye.